Okay, that was a little confusing. But I am here. So I think my internet just crashed, but I'm not sure. And um, that's okay. I'm back. We're back. We'll deal with it. It is what it is. So I'm back again. So the question that I was just asked, this is the restart. My live stream just crashed, and that was an internet issue on my side, which it's a bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. But I'm back, and um, you can catch the first, we'll say, 25 minutes of it. If you just look at my YouTube videos and the live stream section, you can find that video. But here we are. So the question I was asked is, how old am I? I'm 39 right now. And the other question I was asked is, how... Nick asked a funny question. The other question I was asked is, how much money, or how do poker dealers make good money? So the answer is yes, poker dealers definitely make good money. I advertise between 25 and 40 an hour, and it's actually more than that sometimes for people too, but I try not to get crazy with the advertising it. Like, when you get in it, you'll see that it can be more than 40 bucks an hour. But this has a lot to do with you. So if you're somebody that jumps on and spends 30 hours total picking up a little bit here and there of how to deal, and then goes to a poker room that's completely desperate for dealers, gets a job there, say it's a brand new poker room, and they don't really know how to manage it, and you end up dealing 4 or 5 tables a day, and you're a pretty slow dealer, you're not going to make $25 to $40 an hour. That almost never happens, but it has been happening in Texas a little bit in some of these rooms that are trying to open and don't really have a feel for how to get set up in advance. So I do sort of want to warn on that. But if you're at any traditional regular poker room and you have been trained, say you've gone through my entire course, you've spent your 100-something hours learning the lessons and practicing, and you're able to pass an audition at any regular poker room, you should be starting out in that 25 an hour range. And by the time you're experienced, you should be considerably higher than that. So it's a very good way to make some money for yourself. Nick says, how do you play the 2-pair rule in Pai Gow poker? So that's a playing question by somebody that knows the answer to that. And Nick is a friend of mine, and he's someone that I actually used to work in casinos with years ago. This was when I started in 2007, and he is the happiest-go-luckiest person that I know. And I always wonder if it's a front, Nick. I wonder if that's really the you inside. But in Pai Gow poker, so Pai Gow poker is a table game, and normally I defer to my friend Heather for stuff like this, even though I have dealt Pai Gow, which Nick knows because he worked with me when I did that. For me, the 2-pair rule is going to depend on whatever the house has posted. So in any given table games casino, and nowadays, part of the reason why this is good for me to answer is nowadays, my home, the favorite room that I've ever worked at, it's just because I opened it and I made a lot of friends there. It's Calder Casino and Racecourse in South Florida. And they shut the room down and so much has changed there. I still have an affinity for that particular property, even though it's totally different run and all this stuff. Well, they have opened up poker again, but they also have table games too. And so nowadays, some poker dealers are having to deal this player banked version of table games, and Pai Gow might be one of those. So I'm happy to answer this. So the 2-pair rule, depending on how the house says to do it, is sort of what you end up doing. But if you have, if you have an ace and you have 2 pairs that are like 6s or lower, or maybe 7s or lower, you keep the 2 pair together and you play the ace up, right? If you have bigger pairs than that, a lot of the time you're going to split the pairs. And now is when Nick can come in and correct me. But I mean, if you're a dealer playing Pai Gow, it's not really your money, right? Although there was one dealer that I knew that it was sort of hilarious watching him do this. I was flooring, and I was watching him actually cheer for himself as the dealer when he would win. And I sort of not to do that. And later I asked him what was going on there, and he said he just loves gambling so much. He was pretending that he was playing and winning their money. So Isaac says, I have just got into poker and I really like it and I understand most of the basics, but I would like to understand why people say to bet 3x the big blind and explain short about how much you should bet. Okay. But by the way, I think if you had I think for Pygao, if you had a king, it might actually be sixes and lower you keep together. If you could put a king up, and it might have been an ace if you have like nines and something lower, maybe. I can't remember either. I don't remember what this is the Nooksack River Casino from back in the day. I don't remember what their 2-pair rule was. That was 13 years ago. Gosh. So 3x the big blind is a, let's put it this way. If you're memorizing what to do based on what people say makes sense to do, you're learning poker the wrong way. You're learning how to play poker a very mechanical, beatable way where anybody who's experienced is going to be able to take care or take advantage of you. I suggest learning how to play poker from the perspective of I just want to send you to live poker coaching. Is really what I want to do. I mean, yeah, 3x isn't it? It's, think about stack sizes, think about how much each betting round your bets are going to be, how to get your stack in when you're good, how to have enough money to bluff, how to actually play poker. I almost don't feel comfortable. Well, people say to 3x the big blind because in a lot of different games it makes sense, right? Like 2-5 you can open to 15, but there's a lot of tables where you can open to 50 and get callers, and even at 2-5, right? So you sort of want to understand the difference between that too. I don't really feel comfortable answering why people are telling you to 3x the big blind. I can tell you in 1-2 no limit you can 5x it to 10, you can put it up to 12, you can put it up to 15 and get callers. And so then every time you're doing it the other way, you're sort of wasting money. Nick says, whenever I bluff, I look down so they can't read my eyes. No, you don't. You don't ever bluff because you don't ever play poker, my friend. I'm aware of that. Although that is very helpful until you have to read what's on the board, right? One of my favorite, I played a WSOP bracelet event for $1,000 maybe like 7-8 years ago, and one of the most valuable tells that I used during that tournament was a very basic tell that I learned both from conversation with people and also a bit from the Mike Caro book on tells, which even today is still a very valuable book. But when I was playing in that tournament, I literally found weak players and watched their eyes instead of watching the board when the flop would come out. And it really helped me identify whether or not they got a piece of the board. And it was only like 1 or 2 people at any given table, but it made it a lot easier to call their raises. It just, if you understand the game of poker on a very complex level or sometimes simple, it can make a big difference. Isaac says, thanks, you're always explaining so good. You should have more subs because of that. I appreciate that very much, Isaac. That's very kind of you. One day I'll get more subs. I seem to consistently get about 300 or 400 per month, and I'm appreciative for that. So that's certainly something that I'm good with. Let's see, where else do I want to go here? So I was in the last live stream before the internet went out. I was talking about how, if it's been 20 years and you want to jump back in and try to deal poker, whether or not you can. I mean, the real answer is 1 or 2 refresher sessions with me, which can be done either by video or can be done in person. This individual is going to do this in person at Texas Card House, because Texas Card House in Dallas, where I am currently dealing, they're very nice, and they allow me to bring people in there and even record on the table. But I would say it shouldn't be that hard to jump back into dealing. But I haven't dealt table games in, I want to say, 10 years. And I had a refresher on it somewhat recently, maybe like 2 years ago. And when I think about myself jumping back in to deal like blackjack, Spanish 21, any of those things, it's going to take a little bit of practice to get back to it. So I would expect that anybody that's thinking about doing something after doing it for 20 years is going to have some work to do in order to get back into it. Crypto says, can you explain how to read a straight 2 game? What do you mean by read? Like, I know in Florida they have straight 2 limit. It's the only place I've honestly ever heard of it. So I don't remember if you said you were in Florida, but I'm going to assume that you are in Florida because that's the only place I know of any straight 2 limit Texas Hold'em where they only allow incremental betting of $2. And for me personally, reading straight 2 players, you know, I've supervised and dealt a little bit of straight 2. I've supervised a lot of straight 2. Yeah, straight 2 limit, and I'm guessing that's in Florida, right? So for me, reading any limit game is it's sort of similar to reading no limit. These straight 2 limit players are generally very promotion oriented, and you sort of have to know which players at the table are comfortable putting in 2 and 3 bet sizes, right? Even though it's only 2, 4, 6, 8 for each betting round, a lot of these guys at the table are wildly uncomfortable putting in $4 and putting in $6 because they're just there trying to get high hands or trying to get promotions. And so the best way that I would suggest being able to read those players is to put pressure on them by raising and re-raising at the table. They hate it. They'll actually try to complain to get you off the table if they're still doing that. So I would sort of suggest, man, people keep retracting their messages and I want to know what they had said, but oh well. But I mean, in my experience, you have to know there's some players that are going to sort of adjust to aggressiveness and try to trap. There's other players that are just going to run away. So I would suggest doing things like raising with your draws and not going too aggressive either. But I'm trying to figure out which card wins. Oh, you're talking about reading the hands. Okay, I thought you were talking about reading the players because I was just talking about that a moment ago. I'm trying to figure out which card wins. Well, that's Texas Hold'em right there. I have, let me see. I'm going to put it in here. On your phone. Here you go. On your phone, go to the App Store. It doesn't matter if it's an Android or an iOS phone, and search for Mixed Nuts. Somebody who I met through this YouTube channel, who is a poker dealer in Minnesota and a former video game programmer. They actually created this thing called Mixed Nuts, which helps you practice hand reading. And you can click on any individual hand, and it will show you what the best poker hand is for you, and you can sort of figure it out from there. Also, if you go to my YouTube channel, it's a free lesson. I think it's lesson like somewhere around 13, 14, or 15, or somewhere in there, where I do teach the poker hand rankings and all that stuff. So you can get that one for free on my YouTube channel. It's more of a basic hand reading type of video, so you can go find that right on my YouTube channel as well. Crypto Brown says you're the best. I appreciate you very much. Let's see. CNF says 3x big blind plus dead money is just a standard pot size raise, which is typically taught for an ABC style of tight aggressive poker strategy. Yes, I do agree with that, and I also hesitate to say that because, I mean, if you're trying to really learn how to play poker, and anybody who's asking me questions about like how to play poker, I want to give them useful information. I feel like it's good to have that baseline. You know, something that happened to me when I was going through this live poker coaching project with Michael Lockey, I kept asking him questions during the videos that were sort of under the assumption that, you know, figuring out 3x in this situation is the right play was the way to think about poker. Eventually, he stopped me and he was like, dude, you keep asking me these very specific questions, but poker doesn't work that way. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, I feel like people want to know exactly how much to bet in this exact situation. And he's like, no, you need to learn poker from the perspective of thinking about player ranges and how your hand interacts with that range, and your stack depth and your opponent's stack depth, and whether or not you have fold equity, and what they're trying to do with their bet sizes, what they're trying to do by putting money into the pot. Are they trying, like, there's all these different things that he has accumulated that are not programmed rules. And so when I try to talk about poker, I lean away from that. Now, over the next 6 to 10 months, with live poker coaching, we are going to create a how to fundamentally think like Mike course, and that is going to help tremendously with this explanation. It's not done at the moment, so we'll get there eventually. One of my talents happens to be teaching, right? You guys see that I can teach people with clear explanations on how to be able to deal a game like poker, and some of this stuff is pretty complicated and nuanced, right? And so I'm able to go in, sort through the information, understand where a person's at, and then give them what they need in order to be able to succeed at doing that. Well, when it comes to something like playing poker, I don't have the knowledge base to be able to break that down as simply, because it's not as simple of a thing to learn. Learning to deal poker is definitely simpler than learning to play poker professionally, right? However, when I have access to somebody such as Mike's mind, I'm able to dive in there and then build that course as well. So I'm really excited about that, and that will be coming out at some point, but it's going to be a little while. It takes a lot of work to get that done. Let's see. So Damien says, I was playing No Limit Omaha last week. That's pretty unusual, but I have seen it. I had ace king of diamonds, and another player had pocket sevens. What were your other cards? I get it, though. The flop came ace, ace, 6. Turn was a 7, and the river was an ace. How did I lose to a full house when I had quads? So if you had ace king in any Omaha game and there were 3 aces on the board, then you have 4 of a kind and you're not supposed to lose. So I can't tell you what actually happened there, but the way that you just explain this with a board of ace, ace, 6, 7, ace, if you have an ace in your hand, you do have 4 of a kind and you should be winning that pot. Now, that said, if the river was not an ace, then you would only have 3 aces with a king, and they would have aces full of, or they would have sevens full of aces. So I'm not sure exactly what to say about that, but yeah, the way that you just described it, I mean, the way that you just described it, if there's 3 aces on the board and you have an ace, you have 4 of a kind in Omaha. So I'm not sure what to tell you on that, but that would be 4 of a kind. Mayor says, why all courses give trial like 1 month or 1 week, and your course is 49 without trial? Courses give trial like 1 month or 1 week. I do give a trial for my course. Anybody can just jump right in and start using the first 6 lessons for free. You don't need to sign up in order to start with the first 6 lessons. So that's why, because you can literally access my first 6 lessons for free. It's the method that I ended up using. Because I do this through YouTube, YouTube doesn't provide me the functionality to be able to do something like a 1 week free trial. So I had to be creative and just keep my first 6 lessons completely free and unlocked for anybody. So if you wanted to go to my YouTube channel, which you're already on, and jump over to my playlist for all Texas Hold'em lessons, you can start there with lesson 1 and just start learning to shuffle right away. And you get that for free, and you can learn how to pitch, and you can learn how to shuffle cards. You can learn how to cut chips and handle chips, and all that there is for free. Crypto says, I tell everyone about you, and 3 diamond emojis. Appreciate that very much. You know, part of my thing is I'm just me when I'm here. I would love to have a partner in crime. I probably should have somebody, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with this whole project is I learned to just be me on here and answer questions as me. And that's hard to do. I mean, if anybody thinks about building a YouTube channel, it's scary to be yourself, right? Um, the other day I watched, so I had booked a massage at home through the Soothe app, which I do not recommend, okay? I was supposed to have them show up at 2 p.m. and they didn't show up, and I just walked through Universal and I was pretty sore. And I just decided never do this. I've never done this before. I decided I wanted to book something in my place. Nobody showed up at 2, and then they rebooked for 4. Nobody showed up at 4. I'm like, what the heck? You know, I asked for my money back and all that stuff. And I decided to do a yoga workout. So I searched for, I don't know if any of you have heard of P90X. I searched for the P90X yoga video on YouTube, and I wasn't able to find it. And I found this weird looking video that was like an hour and 20 minutes long with some guy, and I figured they'd be watching the P90X yoga video because I've done that before. It gives you this real good stretch feel. And it turned out it was Tony Horton, the guy that did P90X, on YouTube during the quarantine, just being himself and doing yoga and sharing it with everybody for free. And I was like, man, this guy is making it hard to do yoga because he keeps making me laugh. Now, if anyone's ever done the P90X yoga, I super recommend just searching for his quarantine videos because he is so himself and you feel like you're just there chilling and being one of his friends. And I'm like, I hope people feel like that with me, was my whole point there. D1 Key says, what's the legality on being paid dealer for home games? Can I take a rake or charge an upfront fee? Legality on being a paid dealer for home games. I'm not really in a position to advise this, honestly. I haven't really done any research on anything outside of casinos. I know that in some places it's legal to do stuff like that, and in some places it's not. So the first thing you have to do is research where you live. The second thing you have to do is figure out how to properly navigate that entire dynamic. And I feel scared to even give advice in that realm. You know, I see stuff that's done in Texas, for instance, and I just don't even know if it's legal. I don't really know, like, these underground games, these home games. I haven't done the research for any of that stuff personally. And I totally appreciate and like the question because I get where you're coming from, but I don't see myself being able to intelligently advise for how to legally spread a home poker game. Mayor says, I saw it's very good course, but if I want like cancel the member after 1 week, I still need to pay $49. Yeah, it's $49 for the month. You get access to it for the entire month. And I mean, typically a poker dealer course, if you're going to learn it in person, is going to be like in the ballpark of $1,000 to $2,000. So I came in at a price that is basically a trial price. I mean, if you were to go and tell an actual dealer school in person that you want to try it out, they're going to charge you hundreds of dollars for the deposit, if not the entire thing up front. And it's a huge challenge to get any of that money back if you decide to cancel at any time. For $50 a month, I just decided I'm going to make this simple, no-brainer, and you know, it's up to you if you want to try it. And that's why I put the piece in there where you can try it for free without purchasing by watching the first 6 lessons. And yeah, just like D1 Keys says, you can cancel whenever and you still have access for the rest of the month. Damien says, I always threw that in Omaha. You get dealt 4 but can only use 2 were being dealt, so I have a feeling my mate got mixed up between Omaha and Texas Holdem. It was a home game, not at a casino. Yeah, I mean, this is the question where there were 3 aces on the board, a 7 and a 6. Someone had 2 7s in their Omaha hand, and you had an ace and a king. 3 aces on the board, you have an ace and a king. You have 4 of a kind aces with a king. You should win. DNA says, howdy, Mark. Hey, what's up? Trove of info. Stick with it. Appreciate that very much. Mayor says, okay, thanks. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, you also got to keep in mind, Mayor, that because I do this stuff through YouTube, I am incredibly limited. I have people sometimes that they sign up for the membership. This has happened like 3 or 4 times, and you know, it is what it is. I help them, but they sign up for the membership through YouTube, and then they send me an email saying I want to cancel, and I'm like, you signed up through YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google. I have zero control over that. So you sign up through Google, and then you cancel through Google through your YouTube account too. They actually keep a percent of the money, and they send me the rest. So I don't even get all the money. And I'm totally fine with that, because YouTube is such a valuable platform, in my opinion, that does so many good things that I'm happy to share with them. And it's just sort of how it works. And again, this is me being authentic. I don't mind talking about these things. But yeah, it's through YouTube. They don't provide any functionality. And you guys know, trying to get Google to change their ways is not easy. So when you sign up, it's just like D1 Keys said, you get access to the course for 1 month. After that 1 month, you're able to well, after the month, it is going to renew, so it is a monthly thing. But if you cancel any time, you retain access for the rest of the month. And Okie Poker Players here joined the channel at the 60 plus hours of live streams level. So that level is going to get Okie Poker Player access to the previous live streams that I have from before, where you can go dig around and find content in there. It's also a nice little way for $4.99 a month to support my YouTube channel. And I know Okie Poker Player. I actually met him in person. He came in and played at Texas Card House, and he has recently put out some cool content. I am going to say, go and check out his YouTube channel. I haven't watched much of it. I did check out a video of his, and he was starting out when that came out, although I have this impression that his newer content is growing just like he is as a YouTuber. And it's really cool. He's passionate about going around and playing in different places. And so, yeah, I have found that Texas Card House Dallas is this treasure trove for bringing people together in the poker world. I have seen so many different vloggers come through there. I've dealt to Brad Owen, I've dealt to Andrew Nemi, I've dealt to Next Gen Poker, I've dealt to Lexo Poker, I've dealt to Okie Poker Player, I've dealt to about 6 others whose names I forget, and it's really cool every single time. And in case you're wondering, his name is Okie Poker Player. I think, and he can correct this if I'm wrong, it's because he's from Oklahoma, correct? And when you came to Dallas to check it out, you drove down in order to say hi to us, right? But feel free to explain, what your latest video is and why people should watch it. I don't mind something like that in the chat for sure, and I'll read it out loud too. I appreciate the love, right? Like, I appreciate the joining the channel. And in order to do what Okie Poker Player just did, you just click on the join button, and you can either support me and just do your little thanks of $4.99 a month, gain access to about 60 hours of content from my last year and a half or so. But it doesn't include the course. In order to get the course, you have to join at the All Texas Holdem level, which is this direction up here. Hold on, how do I do this? Gosh, I'm going every way but the correct way. This is all backwards, so I can't figure it out. There it is, up that direction. The All Texas Holdem lessons level. So, working on new stuff. That's good. I like anybody who's passionate. By the way, so many people are that I talk to think of themselves as, regular people, and they don't feel like they are somebody that people would watch on YouTube. I just gotta say, that type of mentality stops you from exploring and meeting new people. I don't know if it's happened yet for Okie Poker Player, but it will at some point, where because of his content that he puts up in his YouTube channel, he's gonna meet cool people that he never would have experienced before, and it's gonna create all kinds of fun opportunities for him. And if you have something that you really enjoy, making a YouTube channel about it is just such a fantastic thing. So I'm quite the advocate for that. What do we think? Is it annoying having this little explanation for how to learn it, or to learn how to deal poker up here? I put it up there because I've had so many people that were confused about what to do on my channel. I've had a lot of people that like they join at the 60 plus hours of live streams level, and then they're disappointed that they don't have access to the course, which is why I put this information up in the corner. Ooh, interesting. Okie Poker Player says, by the way, I'm thinking of becoming a dealer. Well, that is pretty powerful. And if that's the case, I encourage you fully to do that too. Anybody who plays poker, you can benefit by being a dealer also. It's a nice way to supplement your bankroll. And it's a good way to spend some time at the table, you know, being able to range people while you're also making money. Your hourly as a poker dealer is going to be better than your hourly as a 1-2 no limit player in most poker rooms. Texas Card House, Dallas, you might be able to beat the dealing hourly as a poker player, but most players or most places, you're going to be able to beat it as a dealer than playing 1-2 no limit. And that's great. Okie Poker Player, I love that you're thinking of becoming a poker dealer. And just so you know, you can upgrade from your current membership, which is 60 hours of live streams, up to the All Texas Holdem Lessons tier, and you don't have to double pay. So it will only charge you the difference. So feel free to do that if you get to the point. But I would say just start with lessons 1 through 6. They are totally free. So maybe I should put that up here too. Yeah, I don't know. What else do we got? So it's been about an hour so far that I've been here. I know this video says 31 minutes. I had a internet mishap, and I'm using my phone right now in order to finish this. But let's see. What else do I want to talk about? So it's been about 10 days since I dealt last, and I'm going to be dealing tomorrow and Thursday and Friday at Texas Card House. And the last shift that I was there, I had an encounter with a very difficult poker player, and I want to tell you guys about that in a second. Let's see what this question says though. Mayor says, on tournament, when someone shove after the flop and is stack, it's under 1 big blind, and after him have 3 people, what they need to pay, 1 big blind or the under. So if it's on the flop and someone goes all in, and it's a no limit game, then they can call the actual amount. It doesn't have to be a full big blind. D1 Key says, I've wanted to become a dealer. I was going to go to CEG dealer school in Las Vegas this summer to learn table games to break in, but I got an internship, so I never got to go. You know, I've heard about that dealer school in Las Vegas. I hear that they do a great job with training, and they also charge a lot. I mean, it's definitely valuable for a lot of people to. My neighbor's knocking on the door, but I'm in the middle of a live stream, so I'm gonna just text him that I'm in the middle of a live stream. I've heard a lot of good things. It's hard to learn on your own as a lesson there. It's definitely difficult to do. You know, it's not for everybody is what I'm trying to say. And so I totally support, let me just say this because he may do it again. It's hard to learn on your own for some people. And I mean, I learned in person in a class, for example, but it is also the cheaper route, right? And you can learn at the convenience of your home, and you don't have to do it on someone else's time, on their specific schedule. It is 2021, right? So why did it get so bright here? Jeez. Let me actually try to adjust that. Maybe that's better. Yeah, a little bit. Oh, come on, camera. Come back. But yeah, it's a bummer. If you had the plans to go do that, that would have been cool to do. Let's see. Okie Poker Player says, how many videos in the 30 days lesson? 30 days. There's 38 lessons in the All Texas Holdem lessons. So, I mean, you can. A lot of people get the membership for more than 1 month. There's 38 lessons. I'd say the first 36 are really where all the information is. The last 2 are slightly tailored more toward people who are trying to run home games. And I think the last one might have just been like stuff I missed where I added that. But it is 38 lessons. It does cover about 35 hours, and it is 35 hours you got to be like present and concentrating for. It's not the type of thing where you can just sort of have it playing in the background and just follow along. Like you sort of got to tune in, and I would say to break it up into maybe 1 to 2 hour chunks a couple times a day in order to get through it. D1 Key says the dream would be to deal at TCH. I always watch the streams. Well, I'm there right now, so if you wanted to stop by and show us what you got and maybe do a couple sessions with me, it sounds like you sort of know how to deal, right? Like, by the way, I 100% know that I know you from your YouTube name, and I'm just forgetting exactly who I'm talking to with D1 Keys. But if you remind me, it'll all click back, I promise. Are you in the Dallas area? It's change if it's before the flop. It's change if it's before the flop. So the question I think you're asking is, let's say that the blinds are, this is going back to Mayor's question. If the blinds are 1,000, 2,000, and on the flop, someone only has, they make it to the flop and they only have 1,000 left, but the big blind was 2,000. If they toss their 1,000 chip into the pot and go all in, and somebody wants to call, they can put 1,000 in, and that's fine. The only difference is if it's before the flop. If it's before the flop and the big blind only has 1,000 that they can go in for. My neighbor had a TV stand for me. I said, yes, give me an hour. If it's before the flop, then it's still 2,000 to call in that scenario. I'm sorry for breaking that up with a text message to somebody, but this is me being me, is what it is, right? Yeah. Let me see. He put it outside my door. Cool. So let's see. Yeah, D1 Keys, I feel like, if I remember right, I feel like I remember that you sounded like you were a pretty good dealer, and you should probably be able to deal at a place like TCH. So reach out to me, send me an email or something, and I can help you make that happen. I think, if I remember correctly, for what stage you were in your learning. Mayor, let me know if I answered your question properly. Okay, the two things: if it is on the flop and there's 3 cards out there, and the blinds are 1 in 2,000, someone has 1,000, they throw the 1,000 out, they're all in. Anybody that wants to call that can just put in 1,000. And if it's before the flop and the person is on the big blind and they go all in for 1,000, then everybody else does have to call for 2,000 still, because that's the amount of the big blind. D1 Key says, I've never met you in person. I'm just in the streams as much as I can. I've only ever dealt home games. That does sound familiar. Okay, cool. Let's see. DNA said, me, allow time to review. Well, now I want to know what that means. Me, allow time to review. I don't get it. I'm sorry. Let's see. So what else do we got here? I'm in college and I try to be as professional as possible when I deal. Well, that's excellent. What state are you in? Like, are you out here? Callie here says hello to all. Hey, Callie here. How's it going? DNA says expect membership to go longer than a month. And that's a very reasonable thing to say. And it's sort of like I said, right? Like, it's about 35 hours worth of lessons, but you got to concentrate. So you're not going to want to just think you can play these in the background and just let it go and go and go and go and not really tune in. It's a lot of information. It's pretty quick, and your brain needs some time to like focus and then digest it. Sometimes you have to understand what's really being said in there. Typically, a poker dealer school, such as the one that D1 referred to is going to be about 140 hours in person. Some of them say 100, but I met somebody recently that said they did an extra 100 on top of that, and that's what it took in order to get through. That's a little bit more than most people will need, but it's definitely like the 35 hours of lessons, plus you got to put the practice time in to train yourself. I provide the information. I don't really train you in these lessons, except for sort of the shuffle and the mechanics, make it so that you can do that. And then DNA says, and review. You pick up new stuff rewatching the same video. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense too, because you gain more and more context, and also it goes, I go pretty quick, I'm not going to lie. I cover all the stuff, and I try to be as efficient as I can, and yeah, there's a lot to it. D1 Key says, I've never had any formal training. I'm from North Carolina, but I go to college in AL, so not very close to Texas. I gotcha. Okay, so when you say the dream is to be at Texas Card House, Dallas, it's like sort of impossible while you're in school, which is totally fine. The sun's starting to go out. Let's see. I sort of want to see this TV stand. I'm sorry. It's just sitting right outside my door. I'm going to go take a peek. Drop your comments in there. I'm curious. Wow. So as a lot of you guys know, I have just recently moved here, right? Incoming TV stand. Wow. Thank you very much to my neighbor Robert. He's an amazing guy. I've only lived here for less than 2 months, and the only reason that he knows that I need a TV stand is because he's the one that gave me the TV. And I probably would have gotten a television sometime soon, but I just haven't done it. I'm a busy guy. DNA says hour to 2 hour chunks at a time. Yeah, that's sort of what I said. The curiosity of humans, couldn't help yourself. I don't know, someone left, my neighbor left a TV stand outside my door. I don't know, I just want to see it, right? Like, my door is right there, so I just went and got it. D1 Key says, the hard thing for me in dealing is all about reps, so I'm always trying to find games to deal as much as I can. Yes. That is absolutely key. I want to turn this light on now because the sun went down a bit. Turn the light back on. Right. Yeah, getting situations and opportunities to get in reps is very important. It can be hard to practice, right? You got to have a good setup at home. At the very least, a dining room table. On my How to Take Advantage of True Poker Dealer video that I have on my channel when you land there, also, I have links to materials you can buy. I think it's a total of less than $200 in order to fully stock yourself to be able to practice at home, right? It's hard. It's hard to get yourself set up properly. Charity events can be a way to do it. Home games can be a way to do it where you get practice. Or sometimes you can just get a little setup at your place and have people come over. Now the brightness is going up. Oh well, there's nothing I can do about this right now. Let's see. It says, I'm still in table dealing and I'm looking forward to the videos. I ran into excessive nervousness during evaluation today. Not sure what to do about that. It really hurt my performance. That is a really common thing, and I have provided a path for people who experience that. I look like the sun right now. The thing that I can provide is I do one-on-one video sessions where I actually audition somebody from scratch, and that I have noticed provides people with that experience. I give them feedback for every single thing that they do wrong, and then they rewatch the video. I send them a copy of the video later. They rewatch that video, and I literally look like the sun. And they practice all of they train the habits of every single thing that I taught them, and it makes it so that, let me do that so it zooms again here. It makes it so that, come on. Technology's annoying me today. So if you want to book a one-on-one session with me before your next audition, I can help you by basically auditioning you through Zoom. You get to keep a recording of the video, and I correct all the things that I see. And people have told me that this process, over and over again, people have told me that this process helps with the nerves because it just gives that perspective and experience, right? The more auditions you do, the easier they are eventually, right? Well, doing one with me, I'm pretty tough, and I'm just going to give you all the feedback, and that's something you don't get from auditions generally. They're generally just seeing if you're good enough at the job to work there. They're not trying to help you. It's sort of a weird, sad thing, right? But at the same time, it's in their best interest not to teach. They're not a part of that. They're just there to evaluate. So maybe that's something that you would want to do. And in order to set that up, you would have to send me an email, Marc at Truepokerdealer.com. I'm going to include that here because it's with a C. And yeah, I offer that service. Let's see. Is there a home game in North Alabama every night? Oh, there is one in North Alabama every night. Some better than others. I think it's Alabama, right? Makes sense. Tri-party games and charity. Yeah, I saw that already. Jacob, I'm in Lee County. Interesting. Mayor says, I understand. Thanks. DNA says, he did it for me and detailed it all out. Appreciate that. Auditioned me over video. Same with me, D1 Keys. I'd rather deal than play. D1 Keys says, I swear though, I have more fun dealing than playing, and that's how I got into this whole thing in the first place. That's what you were saying. Dealing can be very fun. You know, I teased earlier that I'm going to talk about a difficult player. I am going to talk about that if I can ever catch up to the comments. But most of the time, dealing is definitely enjoyable. Sometimes we don't have that many players and people want me to play, and I'm like, no, I want to deal. That's one thing that's sort of fun about home games, honestly, is that anybody can jump in and play. Callie here says, having someone look over would probably help work out the kinks. Very good description of an audition, Marc. Thanks. Yep. Jacob says, oh, that's still 2 to 3 hours for me, I believe. I know there are some Gadsden and Beeham. I'm in Decalb. I have no idea where those places are, but I'm enjoying reading these comments. Speaking of home dealing, are there legit sites that you could go to in order to get more exposure? I might have asked this before. Speaking of home dealing, are there legit sites that you could go to in order to get more exposure? I'm not really sure what that's asking. Are you asking if there are sites where you can go to in order to sign up to deal? I know that there are charity casino sites that you can go to like that. Oh, I see. He's asking about Alabama home games. Okie Poker Player says, of course, as you know, I travel a lot. Will that hinder my progress? What would you suggest? I mean, I know somebody that they have an RV that they have a table set up in that they subscribe to the lessons. And they've got they bought the equipment that I just referred to on the how to take advantage of True Poker Dealer video. There's links there to all the stuff you can buy. But if you're traveling in like a regular car and you don't have the ability to do it, I mean, honestly, it depends. Are you staying in hotels? Are you staying in places with dining room tables? You should still be able to practice. The chips all go in a case, right? The felt and the padding underneath it should be very easy to pack as well. It's probably not fun packing and unpacking and packing and unpacking, but it's doable. And then in terms of I'm trying to think through the rest of this. Watching the videos, yeah, if you're traveling, you can still watch the lessons not in front of a poker table at times. It should still work okay. You just go, you just got to focus is really what it is. And stay tuned in and make sure you understand it. And take notes for yourself or whatever it is that works for you in order to learn the information. Oh, so you guys are talking about Reddit in order to find home games. Oh, that makes sense. Cool. So let me talk about this difficult player that I experienced the last time I was dealing. There are players like this in most rooms, and in Dallas, it's actually fortunate there's fewer people like this than in other places. But basically, this player, now, this is somebody, I want to preface this and say, this is somebody that I have been told by Jazz, who I've mentioned in this, that they're nice to Jazz. They tip Jazz a lot. Out of nowhere, they'll just come in and drop red chips into her dealer box. And, you know, whenever I hear something like that, I automatically have positive feelings for a person like this. Because poker players don't just do that, you know what I mean? And this particular player, though, they have a tendency to make other players at the table very uncomfortable. And the thing that they did this time was they were in a 1-2 no limit bomb pot, which they usually don't play 1-2 no limit. I was sort of surprised to see them at the table. But they're in a 1-2 no limit bomb pot, and they had a jack 9. Another player had I think a jack queen. And in Texas Holdem, you know, you don't have to have both of your cards play. It can be 1 from your hand and 4 from the board or whatever. And so they lost the top half of the board, and the other half of the board, they had a jack 9, the other player had a jack queen, and there were it was like jack, and then maybe like ace king on the board or something like that. And so they ended up chopping with the other player. And a player, so everyone had their hands tabled. So they were basically quartered, all right? They lost the top half and they split the bottom half. So they lost the top board, split the bottom board. And both players had their hands tabled. Actually, 3 players had their hands tabled. And that was the result. So I start to go and chop the pot up. And it, you know, it's a bit of work to quarter somebody. There's a bit of work that goes into that. And so while that's going on, another player at the table stops everything because they're looking at these tabled hands. And they say, wait, shouldn't this player win the whole thing? Now, the player who was the trouble player didn't like that because they were already getting quartered. And they started to give me a really hard time when I explained to the player exactly why the bottom board was a split instead of going to just one player, because they saw a jack queen and thought that the higher kicker was supposed to win. And so this player who was getting quartered was so frustrated. They felt like they were getting needled, and they didn't like the fact that I took any time to explain to the other player what the actual winning hand was and why it was a chop. And so this player has this tendency to speak down to dealers, like a lot of players do. And he started speaking down to me and telling me I'm not supposed to be doing that. And so I turned to the player, and, you know, it's tough because their line is very different than our line as dealers. A player's line that they're allowed to cross is a bit higher than the line that a dealer's allowed to cross in this situation. It's not a balanced situation. So I had to understand that, and I had to respond to the player by staying under my line, right? So they say things like, you know, what are you doing? You're not supposed to do that. Stop explaining it to him. I already got quartered. And I have to stop and explain to this player now, look, this player over here saw a tabled hand. When a hand is tabled, cards speak. Every single player at the table has the responsibility to speak up if they believe that the hand is being read wrong. And in this case, when that happens, I do have to explain to the player what actually wins and why. And then he started explaining to me, no, you don't. You know, basically telling me things like, when I was in grade school, he was already playing poker. Don't tell him how to do things or don't tell him what the rules are at the poker table and all this stuff. Like, I don't know who he is and all these types of things. And then he started to do this thing where he was like cursing under his breath a little bit and some of the type of stuff that, you know, he understands the line. So I could tell that he was doing it. I couldn't tell what he was saying or any of that type of stuff. And everybody at the table was pretty uncomfortable. And it was sort of close to the line that I go in and get assistance to call attention to this player's behavior. And this player had no idea who I was, like I said. And I certainly wasn't going to go and say, really, when you're in grade school, or when I was in grade school, you were playing poker, like, do you know who I am? I'm not going to do any of that stuff. It's not the way to handle a situation. So the question is, what do you do as a dealer when a player is very aggressive and confrontational with you, and they have no respect for who you are and what you're doing and what you are trying to explain to them? The first thing I'll say is coming at this situation with an understanding that this player's losing money, they play at this poker room a lot, and they lose money at this poker room a lot, and on top of that, they pay rake at this poker room, right? Understanding that perspective is valuable to come into it, because I know that it's really not about me, right? The expression of anger and frustration that this player is directing toward me is coming from a place that is in them. It has nothing to do with me at all, right? If they were winning in that session, for example, and they had a winning hand where they were 3/4ing somebody else, and another player at the table asked, what the hand was, or tried to say, oh, shouldn't this player, the one that's upset, shouldn't this player get the whole pot? And I explained to them what happened. This player's not going to start giving me a hard time about that, right? So I think it's important to realize that it's a painful thing as a poker player to lose money at the poker table. Now, not everybody's used to being talked to like that. I happen to be used to being talked to like that in my life. I grew up in a somewhat confrontational household, and that's just the casual, normal way that my mom, for instance, spoke. And I don't think of that as a negative thing. Mom, if you're watching, you thickened my skin very nicely to be able to handle situations like this. And in her case too, like, it wasn't always about me that her frustration was, right? This is how people are. So understanding where the player is coming from is a really important thing there. Now, at the same time, it does need to stop, right? So if a player is making everybody at the table uncomfortable, as a dealer, handling it in a way where all I'm doing is explaining things, and there's a few things that I'm monitoring for, okay? If the player had said, F you, and thrown curses at me, okay, that's a line that a lot of casinos don't allow players to cross, and I believe that that's a very smart line to hold. And at Texas Card House in Dallas, if the player had cursed directly at me openly in the middle of the conversation, then I actually have no choice. It's an automatic floor call, and that's when I get a floor over there. But instead, I continued to interact with the player respectfully, and he did little things to test me after that as well, where he would get up from the table in a small blind and be walking back and see if I was going to deal him in and stuff like that. It's almost like he just wanted there to be something to set him off, and I wasn't going to do it. And, at the same time, the thing that I did was, after that table, I went over to a floor and I told them about the situation that had happened. I explained to them that he's like this frequently. It's making people at the table uncomfortable, which you can make the argument as a poker player, well, if I'm making people at a table uncomfortable, but I'm not crossing any of these lines like cursing directly at a dealer or another person, then you can't do anything about it, and that's actually not true. If a player continues to make people in a poker room uncomfortable, and this is supervisor stuff, but nonetheless it's valuable to hear. If a player continues to make people in a poker room uncomfortable, they are affecting whether or not those players are likely to come back. And the staff is absolutely able to put a stop to that. And that player does absolutely need to get in line and realize how they're affecting the other people who are paying customers in the poker room. And so that's something that I sort of monitored. And, after all that, I helped him out by throwing out some trash that was by his backpack that I wasn't sure if it was his trash or not, but it was the type of thing that shouldn't just be on the floor in the room anyway. So when I got tapped out, I cleaned up that trash and threw it out. Now, the next time that I deal to him, it's going to make it that much easier for me to handle him, because I took a road with him that was very appropriate and did not retaliate in any way. And it's very easy as a dealer to want to retaliate, right? When somebody starts speaking disrespectfully to you, it's just really easy to have that feeling of, I don't have to put up with this, right? But if you understand how to go about handling that situation, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Now, if you're an inexperienced dealer and you're in that situation, by the way, I absolutely have the ability, being me in this particular poker room, to call someone over and ask for them to tap me out and then go put a shirt and tie on and then go pull the guy off the table. I'm not going to do that either, right? Like, that's just unique to me, being a dual rate in this room and also being someone who's very experienced in poker and respected. But that's not the way to do it, because I'm not trying to win this interaction, right? That's not what you're trying to do as a dealer. The thing that you want to do is basically take the high road and establish rapport, so that when the person is out of line in the future, which you know it's very likely to happen, you can say, listen, I have handled you with respect. I have handled you in a way where I've listened to the things that you had to say. Here's something that needs to stop, though. You're making people uncomfortable at the table. Or floor, and when the floor comes over, you can start by explaining what happened the previous time and explain the way that it was handled by you, and then explain what happened in this situation. And you can see, even though I've handled this player with respect in the past, they're continuing to be disrespectful to me. And then it's sort of up to the supervisors to handle it intelligently. Now, I have confidence at Texas Card House Dallas that will be handled responsibly. I don't know in any given poker room that every single supervisor is going to handle a situation like that correctly. It can be difficult when you're stuck at the table for another 20 minutes after something like that happens. But I sort of wanted to share this whole explanation with you guys just to sort of see what it's like. I mean, somebody coming at me is something that I'm used to. I'm used to it more as a supervisor. I'm also used to giving it back to them in an appropriate way. But every single time I ever do it as a supervisor, I always start out by asking for their side of the story. It makes it a lot easier to have that conversation. But yeah, I figured that was an interesting share. D1 Key says, when you're dealing at TCH, is there cheating, and how much responsibility is on you for game protection? I ask this because of cheating issues while dealing at home. I can't say that there's no cheating, but I haven't seen any. I would be a little bit. It's a lot harder to pull it off in a actual poker room when there's cameras coverage and more experienced people in a lot of cases. We do a pretty good job of identifying marks on cards off the table. We do a pretty good job of, being aware when players are playing together. And also in a poker room, in a casino, you have players that are more experienced too, so they're going to pull out anything fishy as well. There's just a lot more protection in that setting. When you're at a home game, if somebody cheats, there's not a lot you can do to figure out what happened. But our camera coverage is very high tech, right? So this is true for a lot of poker rooms nowadays in casinos. You can go and zoom in and see what happened in a lot of cases. And because of that, it's a lot harder to cheat, and the consequence is pretty severe. It's the money plus getting kicked out permanently, plus who knows what else depending on what happened. And I haven't ever actually experienced this, but my neighbor just came by and dropped off a TV stand. Well, he explained to me that he's a bouncer for a bar in Deep Ellum, which is in Dallas, and he was saying how the laws in Texas are crazy. Like if you determine that someone's trespassing, once you let them know that they're trespassing, you can sort of do whatever you want to them to get them off your property in Texas. And some of the stuff that I heard described was pretty wild. And sometimes the people are just like, oh, I'm going to tell the cops what you did, and they're going to do this and that. And he says they never do. I'm just like, yikes. Like, if you're ever trespassing in Texas, get off the property as fast as you possibly can is what I would say to you. It's some scary sounding stuff, but yeah, when it comes to cheating, I mean, it would be nice to hear sort of what you're talking about. I've in casinos, it's been very infrequent that I have come across a situation that I consider to be cheating. Once as a floor, I kick people out for what I consider to be collusion, where I decided to actually look at the hands involved, and I determined the two players, this was in Florida, I determined that the two players were actually playing together, trying to get more money in the pot from a third player. The money was returned. The pot actually went to the player who had been the victim of it, and those players were kicked out. But that's once in... I was in casinos back then for over 10 years, and I was a supervisor for 7 of it, or shift manager for 7 combined, and I only saw that once. I haven't seen The closest thing I've seen to cheating while I've been dealing at Texas Card House has been one incredibly drunk woman sitting in seat 1 next to me who tried to ask me what they should do with their hand. They did not expose their hand. This was on the flop or the turn. I said, I can't give you any advice on how to play poker that violates 1 player per hand. And then they turned to their left where there was someone sitting next to them who was less drunk than them and also better at poker. And the player went like this, and she ended up pushing all her chips in, and I had to call a floor for that. But I mean, he didn't know what she had. Like, if he had seen her hand, then that would probably kill the hand. He didn't even know what she had, so it's sort of hard to say that would be a problem. But that was sort of a drunk situation. I wouldn't really say that was people playing together. It's just one of those things where you're just like, oh gosh, I wish that you hadn't done this. And then after that, she was so afraid that she was going to get kicked out because the supervisor came over, said, all right, we watched the tape. I didn't see anything that made me determine that the hand needs to be killed. However, if there's anything else that happens like this, you are going to be asked to leave, right? Which is pretty standard way to handle that. I had another interesting pot happen at Texas Card House. And, you know, it's interesting. When you're playing deeper games, there's a lot of personalities. D1 Key says, I was wondering how the TCH surveillance compared to casino. It's pretty on point, honestly. They put the money into it. And, I mean, you sort of have to if you're going to do it right. They've got coverage all over the room. Let's see. So another situation happened in a 2-5 game where, let's see, it ended up being 500 something pre-flop 3 ways. So it went like raise, re-raise, re-raise, and then back to the original raiser. It was like 20, 50, 100, and then went to 505 or 550 or something like that. Call. The flop comes out, 175 is what was bet, call. The turn comes out, 1505 was bet. These are very deep 2-5 stacks. And it goes call, and then the third player who called, when they said call, they had a huge mountain of chips. And they said call and pushed all their chips in because they thought that was less than $1,500. It turned out they still had about $800 left. It was a lot of red, a lot of green, and they didn't really know what they had. After I took their money out and pushed their 800 back, they flipped their cards up when the river came out because they hit their flush and they had it in their head that they had been all in. Or they were confused in some other way. But they did actually have 800 behind. And the action then, I told the player, okay, I announced what the cards were. King of diamonds, queen of diamonds. They had hit a flush. The board was paired. There was an ace on the board as well. And it goes check. The next player goes all in. And then this player ends up calling for the 800. The player went all in for like 3,000. And then the last player in the hand folds. And so, I mean, the guy that went all in didn't have a flush beat, and he loses the whole pot, and then he's all bent out of shape about it. He's like, well, the guy exposed his hand, it should be dead. And it's like, no. And so the supervisor came over and explained to the player who was complaining about that 2 hands later, didn't say anything during the actual hand, let the whole pot get shipped to that other player, was complaining about it 2 hands later, the floor was called, explained that, you know, the hand should have been killed, and, you know, tried to say the thing, if this was any respectable casino, that hand would have been killed because it was exposed before the action was done. And the supervisor explained to the player, like, no, it's not allowed, but we don't kill the hand for that. And the player had such a tough time understanding how it's not allowed if they don't kill the hand for that. And it's the type of thing where poker players often have their own logic that they think makes more sense than the logic that is built into what the supervisor is explaining, and they just don't let it go. And it, like, the player did the type of thing where he's like, do you have any idea who I am? And the supervisor's like, there's no answer that you're going to give me there that's going to make this change the outcome of that hand. Like, you could be the president and you're still going to have to lose that hand. the hand's not getting killed because you're the president. Like, it's just the poker industry about 13 years ago made that change, and it's just it's interesting having these situations, and then the player gives the dealer a hard time too, and all this other stuff. But this is what it's like, right? This is what it's like being in the streets, dealing some poker. DNA says, I once had to deal with a drunk player at a charity event. He kept getting up and down, disappearing, etc. Then when he was there, he slowed the game down. I'm sorry, you said he slowed the game down. Yes, that happens a lot. And when it gets to that point, you are supposed to call a floor in a poker room, and they will be, if they're affecting the game that much, they're going to be asked to get up from the table. Jacob says, that's Friday DNA, LOL, yes. DNA says, in frustration, I just started taking his cards away each deal and would take amounts for the blinds when the buttons went around. I had other players who wanted to move the game around because they wanted to get as many hands before blinds went up. Is there a time limit to act in a charity tournament or B, cash game? So it's really tough in a charity event to manage that. That's why I said in a casino or a poker room, that's something you get a floor. As soon as it's like that, you just get a floor over there, and you tell them this player's acting a bit slow. Do you mind just evaluating them or something like that? And you sort of do it quietly, right? Like, you would call the floor over. If they go to the other side of the table, you ask for them to come over here, and then you say, like, seat 5 is blah blah blah, or seat 8 is blah blah blah. You say it quietly so that they can't hear. Please keep an eye on them for a minute and see if it's okay for them to continue with this game. But in a charity events are different. It's not enforced the same as regular poker because, generally speaking, it's not like a buy-in or anything like that. And even if it is a buy-in, it's charity. You're not like seriously playing to win prize money. So, I mean, that just depends. I would still probably alert the people at the charity, but I don't know. It depends on what instructions you have when you go there. I've dealt a couple charity things, and I would probably just manage it myself if it's really just a charity thing, and try to speed things along as much as I could. Keep telling the player it's your action, it's your action, it's your action. Stuff like that. I don't have a good answer. It depends on how they want to run the charity event. Charity's just different. In a cash game, generally, if somebody is clearly drunk and therefore slowing everything down, then it's not about a time limit. It's about them affecting everyone else at the table. So that would be something you get a supervisor for, sort of separately. There were buy-ins. Yeah, well, I mean, it still depends how you want to run it. Jason says, in a Florida room where running it twice is allowed, even in multi-way pots. Was there another part of that question? Oh, okay. So it goes below. I looked up, but it goes down. So in a Florida room where running it twice is allowed, even in multi-way pots, 2 players were deep and the third was super short. Short player won the first board. 2 deep stacks chopped the second board. I was lost. Walk me through the process, please. So the first thing that you have to do there is you actually don't even evaluate the short stack hand for either board. The first thing that you do is evaluate the deep stacks for the first board. So you're gonna handle the outside pot first. Okay, outside pot. You didn't say who won the first board between the 2 outside players, but they're basically going to get quartered. So what you would do in this case is one of the outside, for the outside pot, which I'm guessing that they're stacked. Let's make it simple here and say there's a main pot that is the short player. They're all in for that pot, and that pot is complete. And then separately you have both of the other players push their stacks in, and their stacks are both in front of them. Okay, so you evaluate the outside pot first, and the stacks that are pushed in. Let's say that they're you figure out. Let's say that you figure out that the player on this side wins the top board, and they chop the second board. Okay, I think that's what you're saying, right? Yes. So the player on this side wins the top board for the outside pot and chops the second board. So that means that they're going to quarter the other player. They get 3 quarters, the other player gets 1 quarter. Okay, so you could bring all that in, chop it in half, give half the pot, half the pot to this player, take the rest, chop it in half, and then give half the pot to each player. Or you could realize that if you get a count for this player and a count for this player, if you get a count for this player, you see how much they have, and you take that amount from this player over here, you can just take that amount right here, chop it in half, and give this player half of that money. When someone gets quartered, the matching stack amount, they just get half of that. So let's say that they're both all in for 1,000 on the outside each. It's 1,000 here and 1,000 here evenly. This player is just going to give this player 500 when they're quartering them. And let's just do it real quick, right? So let's say you take the 2,000, you put it together. You're going to cut it in half. That's 1,000 and 1,000. You give 1,000 over here first, then you cut this in half. It's 500 and 500. You give 500 here and 500 here. What have you just done? You gave them half of this amount, right? It was 1,000 here. You're going to give them their 1,000 back plus 500. I explained that very quickly. I haven't actually done a video on quartering in my lessons because I sort of feel like in order to pass an audition, you don't need to know how to do that. Anyway, then to answer the rest of your question, so the thing that I would do if it's 1,000 here and 1,000 here is I would just take half of this 1,000, give it to this player, all right? Outside's done. Now the next thing I do is I chop the main pot in half. I give half of that to the short stack, the one that was all in that won the top board and lost the bottom board. And then I take their cards and muck them. Then I chop the other half of the main pot to each of these players, and I'm done. And look, I know that was a little bit confusing. Maybe go back and listen to it again, but that is the process that I would go through in order to handle that. Let me know if you followed that. I'm actually curious. Let's see. I didn't really have instructions. I use your concepts when dealing. Oh, that's pretty cool. I appreciate that. Hit Girl says, charity is a lot of non-poker players too, so they may not understand the etiquette. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of the reason why people generally don't want to, like, get on somebody's case in a charity event because they're not people who have... Nobody should have an expectation on charity poker players to know really what the etiquette is and what they're doing there. And so that ends up being the result. Okie Poker Player just upgraded to the bonus mixed game lesson level. Very appreciative of that. That is going to provide you all the information that you need to deal at the WSOP, which I don't have any affiliation with, but trust me, it's true. Or somewhere like Texas Card House, where you can learn all of the mixed games and also all the Texas Holdem instructions as well. So definitely appreciate that. And you can always reach me by email if you have questions as well. And you know where to find me too. That meant Texas Card House because Okie Poker Player is someone I've met in person. Let's see. DNA says, for sure, Hit Girl. He didn't have a clue. Yeah, that happens a lot. Okie Poker Player says, is the chat you're reading a Discord? No. I'm not currently using any Discord server. I don't know what chat you were referring to that I was reading. In the same charity tournament, Mark, I had a 3-way all-in, and because of your video advice, I was able to handle it like a pro. Man, that's really nice to hear. I appreciate that very much. And yeah, the 3-way all-in, side pots, all that stuff. I'm almost embarrassed to say it took me a really long time to create that content. It feels really good to have those side pot and multi-way all-in videos done as a part of the course now. Also, the other one that people ask me a lot about, which Okie Poker Player just got access to, is the pot limit. Omaha, how to calculate the pot video. It's like I had to do a 2.5-hour video almost, or maybe a 2-hour and change video in order to cover all that stuff for both of those. But it's all there now, and I feel good that that's all done. Jason says, thank you very much. Floor was hovering when it went down and had me do it completely wrong. I'm going to listen to you again and do it on a table with chips now. Thanks for explaining. Absolutely. Fanis says, we did. By the way, you don't have a choice as a dealer when your floor tells you what to do. It just is what it is. And you can run into a situation where your floor says to do something that's just not right. And you know what? Just do it. Once the floor is there and they're handling it, do not try to change anything. If you're really concerned that the money is literally going to be wrong to the wrong person, I would, depending on who the floor is, I would probably quietly speak up. But once the floor is handling it, you really have to be very sensitive in that situation, because if you in any way undermine your floor, it's only going to be bad on you. Let's see. Jacob says work from outside in, right? So I was talking about starting with the outside pots with the stacks that have been pushed in, right? And then you get to the main pot. It makes it so much easier. DNA says I had to explain etiquette a couple of times. It's tough to even explain etiquette in a charity tournament or a charity event. It just is, because it's like, well, what is the etiquette in a charity event? It's really not the same standard as in a poker room. So that type of stuff, it's like, it's great to sort of explain the etiquette, because there are a few players at the table generally that do understand poker, but it's really tough. Those are tough situations. I hope you got paid the big bucks for that. Fannis says, I got 4 days of training as a dealer and I'm going to deal in a local poker room. Any tips? Yes. Learn as much as you can and understand that there's going to be a lot of stuff that you've never seen before. So 4 days of training as a dealer is not enough. Now, I don't know if you had any training leading into that, right? Like maybe you were a table games dealer already. Well, if you started as a table games dealer, it's going to make it easier because your mechanics are going to be solid and all that stuff. But don't try to rush is what I would say is a tip. 4 days is not enough. If that's literally from scratch, even if you've been a poker player, it's going to be really hard for you. I would say, I feel a little bit weird saying this, but this is the truth. I would say getting my All Texas Holdem lessons course, like join the channel at that level, and just sort of like at the same time start watching stuff so you can educate yourself on how to deal poker for the things that weren't taught to you in those 4 days. And it's going to take you a month or two to gain all the context you need. Getting that table time is going to help you a lot, but just don't try to go too fast. Your speed is going to come with time. Don't worry about the poker players pressuring you. They're going to see you get better over time, and really just focus on training your habits, figuring out what habits you need to have so that you can make things automatic for your hands and mind that you don't have to continue to put energy toward. And just pick a few things at a time per table, or one thing per table, until you've trained it, and then go to the next thing. And before you know it, it's going to be relatively easy. But that before you know it might take a couple months. It's a lot. It really is a lot. Let's see. Oki says, yes, I do. It's like algebra. Gigi, is circuit dealing something worth considering? And then Gigi also said 4 days of training. Oh boy. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty tough. And then Fanda said no training at all. And then said, I guess I have to self-educate. And Gigi said, take your time. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot that goes into dealing poker. So whatever you learn in 4 days is almost definitely not going to be enough. You're getting thrown into it, but listen, this is an opportunity that most people do not get, just learning on the job for dealing poker. Why don't people generally get to do that? Because you're handling people's money, right? So most poker rooms are not willing to let somebody do that. Now, I have heard, for example, in Texas, I have heard some poker rooms are so desperate to hire that they will take somebody with similar training. And, you know, unfortunately, it really makes the room look bad if the person can't do the job, but that's not on you. They offered it to you. Just go in and turn yourself into a good dealer is what I'll say. Ask a lot of questions. Call the floor whenever you just don't know. Don't make stuff up. Making stuff up is a habit that will absolutely get you fired. Making stuff up is a habit that you will have a tough time breaking. Call the floor every time you don't know the answer to something, and then do what you're told. And if you think it sounded weird, come on to one of my live streams and say what happened and ask me, and I can give you feedback as well. Although I say this all the time, no matter what I teach you, listen to your supervisor, because they're the one that's actually employing you. Let's see. So going back to the circuit dealing, I like very much the quality of dealer on the circuit. I also have not ever dealt the circuit, but I have talked to many people where I've worked and they've come through my property. I used to work at the Hard Rock in Hollywood. I also used to work at Seminole Coconut Creek, and we would bring in circuit dealers to deal large events for tournaments. Sometimes they would even make their way into the cash room if they didn't need the dealers later in the event when there were fewer tables going on. And we usually could use them, right? So I've gotten to know a bunch of these guys, and every single one of these guys seems more professional than the average poker dealer is what I've experienced. If you're able to get yourself into that, you're going to make some really cool connections, you're going to learn some different parts of the country, and you're going to have this lifestyle where you work a lot all at once, and then you get a couple weeks off, and then you work a lot all at once, and then you get a couple weeks off. And I mean, that's appealing to a lot of people, right? If you have kids and a wife or a husband, it might be a little bit tougher, right? But if it fits your lifestyle and you're down to like grind it out for like 12-hour, 13-hour days, 6 days in a row, 7 days in a row, 10-hour days, 7 days in a row, sometimes it's even like 10 to 11 days or longer. You're able to grind that out and then take some time off, but have made all that money. I say it's great. You are going to be held to a higher standard. You are going to have to know how to do your job incredibly well. And you're going to be around people who can give you the right answers to the complicated questions that have a lot of experience. So if you can get yourself into a situation where you're dealing the circuit, I think there's a lot of value. Now, I will say this, I don't really know much about what the circuit's been like during COVID. I've had a couple of conversations with people. I did interview Luis Rodriguez, who is someone I've worked with in the past. He has been the one who's run the circuit events when they've come into town, run the series. And, you know, it sounds like it's been a little bit different with the circuit since COVID started, but I don't know if it's still true since things have opened up a little bit more. I believe that there's more series that are going around. And, I mean, it's definitely a lifestyle that some people really like, and I think there's a certain pride that goes with that. That's sort of like, yes, I am a circuit dealer. I know what I'm doing. So I definitely recommend that as well. And Gigi just joined the 60 plus hours of live stream level, and I definitely appreciate that. Thank you for the support. And yeah, it's really cool. Now, just a reminder to everybody, and I sort of have it up on the screen over here. Man, I have so much trouble. If you're looking to get access to the actual lessons for how to deal Texas Hold'em, the 60 plus hours of live stream is not the level that you get that at. That's going to get you access to the old live stream content, and it's also a really nice way to sort of say thank you and just support me for $5, right? It's just $4.99. So I appreciate that very much either way. But if you are looking to get into the circuit, by the way, and you want to try to find a path to get in and you've got skills, definitely let me know. I will connect you with Luis is a good place to start, and some other guys that might be able to help you get in. Let's see. Thanks for the info, DNA. Skills to pay the bills. Yeah, that's a good one. Or if you're if you're working at a charity event, it could be take shots, make lots, right? Some of those events, they let the dealers like drink and stuff. DNA says, is it that way in San Diego too at the Indian casino? Desperation hiring. How does one find circuit games? So generally speaking, well-established poker rooms and well-established markets like San Diego are not going to be as desperate to hire. You're usually going to have to, I mean, if a poker room is banging, like has a lot of players there and a lot of tables, usually the poker room is going to be able to pick from the top dealers that come and apply. it's not the type of thing where it's not the type of thing where they can like run out of dealers, because a lot of people have known them and it's an established market and there's a lot of people that generally can deal in the area. But COVID changes some things. I know that a lot of poker rooms have had to do a lot of hiring and it's been pretty thin in terms of finding people, and I've had a lot of people reaching out to me about that. So I can't say for sure that any poker room isn't desperate, but generally speaking, you know, when Fanis says they are going to be starting to work in a poker room after receiving 4 days of training, just like Gigi said, I'm just like, oh, it's going to be hard. I mean, before I started dealing poker, I went through table games training and then a separate poker dealing school. And I'm trying to picture if I were to get thrown into it, like I did understand the rules of poker as a poker player, but even the room that you deal at might have its own poker rules that are different than what you learned as a player. And there's all these gaps. And as a dealer, you literally have to have an answer for everything, or you have to be able to call the floor. It's just, it's a lot to it for sure. So, DNA says in San Diego city limits, no casinos are open anymore. Interesting. So when they do that, listen, when a casino's been shut down for a while and they decide we're going to reopen and hire poker dealers, that is a very good time to try to get in. Very good time, because they just need people. And a lot of the people who had been working there in the past have moved on. And some of them who are older might not feel comfortable going back. And, you know, there's all these different factors. So, yeah, I know Oki says Black Hawk is desperate. By the way, just reminding everybody, Oki Poker Player has his own YouTube channel. He is a poker player vlogger too. You can check out his stuff. He's new and he's growing. I've met him in person. I haven't gotten a chance to watch his recent content, but you know, I just want to show some love and support. He joined my channel twice now. He joined at the bonus mixed games level. Huge thank you for that. Like I said, I'm here if you need me, and go check out Oki Poker Player's channel. He's chatting right now in the chat here. Very nice guy. Very, very happy to meet him in person for sure. I'm actually curious if he remembers when I dealt to him, because I didn't say who I was at the time. I just said, oh, okay, cool. You know, let me check it out. And then I commented on his channel on one of his videos that I got a chance to watch afterwards. So I don't even know if he remembers me from when I was dealing to him, but I was paying attention once he said he had a YouTube channel. He's a very good guy. Let's see. That's what I was thinking post-COVID. Thanks, says Gigi. American Aces, skills to pay the bills. Always said that. Yep. Blackhawk is desperate. All closed up. Won't issue new permits. Oh, interesting. Oh, man. Yeah, I've been hearing all kinds of stuff. Some poker rooms, like Encore in Boston, I read some article about they're about to open poker. They've had the casino open with slots and table games for a while, and they haven't had the poker room open. And people were like asking me what I think about that. It's like, well, poker doesn't make as much money, so it's not as much of a priority during times like this when the casino can sort of say, yeah, we don't want to worry about that right now. They can sort of do that, you know. Poker is a fun thing, but the house doesn't make nearly as much as they do off of table games. All closed up, won't issue new permits. That's interesting. There was something else I was going to say in here too. I don't know. That sort of happens. I don't remember at the moment. Oh, let's see. So it's about 3:16 Central Time, which is like 4:16 Eastern. So I am going to be wrapping it up pretty soon. I'm going to stick around, answer some final questions in here. DNA says original owner got permit, won't allow transfers, so when owner dies, so does the permit. Used to have 50 rooms in the city of San Diego limits. That's interesting too. Sounds very political. A lot of the time you run into weird politics when it comes to running poker rooms. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. Oki Poker Player says, yes, I remember your face. Didn't realize you were a true poker dealer. Yeah, like I said, I knew that you didn't know who I was at the time, and I thought it was pretty funny. It happens to me a lot, you know. I sort of just put the feeler out, and I don't really worry about it. I did the same thing to Brad Owen. I didn't tell him who I was. Like, I just thought it was fun. I did have an actual combo with Next Gen though. Let's see. American Aces. Always been interested in circuit dealing, but I just started a new gig not long ago. Don't want to leave it. It's too good. Well, good. Keep it. I totally get it. DNA says, I'll send you a few emails about references. It is. Sure. Go right ahead. I'll put my email down there again. Marc at Truepokerdealer.com. That is my email. I am always available for everybody who needs it. Let's see what else. I think I had some other emails too. Oh yeah, I gotta help that out. Let's see. I don't know. I've got some other stuff I'm sure was there. Let's see. Hit Girl says, I was tipped 3 $25 chips at separate times last night from a generous player who took down 3 massive Omaha pots. I just want to humble brag. Listen, that is a great feeling, right? Like a green chip, a green chip, a green chip. It's a great, great feeling. I had a player, my last shift actually, he won a $70-something $100 Omaha bomb pot at a 2-5 game, and he tipped me a full stack of $100 in red, which it was pretty funny, like having like pushing the pot. I'm pushing the pot. He slides me back a stack of red. And I'm just like, whoa, and it ended up being $100 worth. And those moments where something like that happens and someone really takes care of the dealer is just a absolutely beautiful moment. Like, it's energizing. You feel appreciated. You feel, and you don't know when it's coming either, right? Like, you have no idea when somebody's going to tip you like that. And I'm really happy to hear that you got, I mean, this is probably at one time at one table, right? So we talk about $25 to $40 an hour. These little bumps where you're getting $75 off of one player at one table really make a huge difference. Another humble brag here, and this, I've never had this happen for what it's worth, but I hear that it can happen. American Aces says, I was tipped $0 by a whole table for 30 minutes due to all wrong players winning. Humble brag. That is brutal. I'm very sorry to hear that. Totally believe you, depending on where you're playing. But man, that sounds like a 1-2 limit game somewhere, and it sounds like something that I hope I don't experience. In all of my time, I have never gotten completely zero on a down. I don't think I've gotten less than like $7 in a down, maybe $6. But it's also possible that there's times I'm not remembering, for what it's worth. Lake Poker Consulting says, hey Marc, is there a clear course online where a new dealer can learn step-by-step all to become a dealer? Yes, that is right on my YouTube channel. So right up here, you can see all Texas Hold'em lessons and bonus mix game lessons. So if you click the join button on my YouTube channel and you go to join the channel, there's 3 tiers. One of them is the 60 plus hours of live stream. That's not going to give you access to the course. It gives you access to some of my old live streams. The All Texas Hold'em lessons will teach you everything about how to deal poker from scratch in casinos, and it only teaches Texas Hold'em. And the bonus mix games lessons includes everything from the All Texas Hold'em lessons plus. It teaches Omaha stud, mix games, and all that so that you could deal just about anywhere. So, yeah, I have all that right here on YouTube if you just join my channel. And thank you for asking that. Let's see, American Aces. I guess I didn't get a 0 because seat 1 who couldn't catch a pot said sorry about the table and gave me a nickel. See? Yeah, it's interesting though. Like, when you think about the truth of it, you're like, wait a minute, this story didn't actually happen the way that it felt. That guy still gave me $5, and players do take care of you. Yeah, I've never experienced an actual $0 down. Jacob says, what does an audition consist of? If you're talking about a regular audition in a poker room, they're going to test you on whether or not you can deal the games that they spread in their room. So in a room that only really has Texas Hold'em, they're probably going to have you deal something like 1-2 no limit, 2-5 no limit, and they might take some shots at you as the players, pretending to be the players, and see how you handle those difficult situations. And they might have a bunch of people go all in to make sure that you can handle challenging all-in scenarios. If they have you deal, if they have you, like if they get Omaha and those other games in the room too, like pot limit, they're gonna probably throw that at you as well in the audition, and you just have to show up and do that stuff well. It's sort of like it's called an audition because it's sort of like an audition to get a acting job, right? You have to perform at a high level and be somebody that they can see filling that role, right? So that's what it consists of. Now, if you're asking about an audition with me, I do video auditions where you can email me and set up a time, and we'll do a one-on-one video audition. If you're in Dallas, I can do it in person, and we record the whole thing. You are at home at your table. You have it set up so that I can see you and see what you're doing on the table, and we record it, and I just correct everything I see that needs to be corrected. And I mean, I do have a certificate that you can get, but most people just use my auditions as a way to correct a bunch of things that they're doing that need to be corrected in order to smoothly pass an audition in the future. And then I give you the instructions of, all right, I just did this audition with you. I made a bunch of corrections. Here's a link to the video from it. Now go back and watch the video, and every time I make a correction, pause the video and train that thing I taught you over and over and over again until it's a habit. Then come back to the video, watch the next part of it until I do it again, train that over and over again until it's a habit, until you've trained and corrected all these habits that you needed corrected from the audition with me. American Aces says, Jacob, one of my bosses said the reason they were impressed with me was because I told them to keep the cards over the table. So just run your game and be honest with yourself. Yep. That's very good advice too. You know, part of what they're testing for is to see that you also understand how to get players to do the things that they're supposed to do. So if a player brings their cards off over the rail and they're holding them like down here, as a dealer in any game, you are supposed to correct that, right? So you can't let cards go off the rail. You can't let, there's all these things. I mean, right, I teach an entire course on this, and running your game. Basically, when someone's auditioning you, it has to feel like poker. The auditioner has to feel like you're going to be able to deal the game of poker in a real way. So a lot of the time when people like learn to deal in school, and this can be the same with Truepokerdealer, if they're not getting feedback from anybody and you're learning my course, you might run into a situation where you go into a casino for an audition and it's like not real to you, right? The number one thing you want to do when you sit down to audition is 100% pretend that you are dealing a real live poker game. You want to pretend that every single dollar on that table is real money, and you want to pretend that every single rule that you are enforcing is being enforced intelligently, and make it feel like it's a real poker game, and then the person who's auditioning you is going to be much more comfortable with you picturing you as a dealer. Also, the way that you communicate with the players is a factor, and all this other stuff too. So hopefully that helps you guys. So again, last opportunity for any questions before I jump off. It has been really good times, hanging out with you guys here, and I appreciate you all, and it's been fun. I'm gonna linger for a moment, give you guys a chance to jump in and ask anything you want, and then I'm gonna say goodbye, and then I'll see you next week. Jacob says, thanks guys. Gigi says, thanks for sharing. Absolutely appreciate you. And let's see. American Aces says, all right, back to the box I go. Thanks for all your videos. You're welcome. Appreciate you. Differences between corporate casino and card room. That's a good question. It looks like there's two different Gigi's. Interesting. A corporate casino is going to have a lot of, they follow the rules a lot more strictly, because poker is a game where you have a dealer at a table. Table games are games where you have dealers at tables. they sort of mix the cultures there, where the surveillance is watching the table games dealers very intently, because in table games they have house's money that's being won and lost. So if a dealer makes a mistake, it's the house's money, and the house is losing money in that mistake. The procedure has to be excellent, because the surveillance needs to be able to follow all of that information. And the entire culture of the property wants to keep that strong and tight. So when they have a poker dealer, they treat it more intently with the rules than a poker room that's just a card room where it's only poker, and they can sort of keep this slightly more friendly vibe. You know, at Texas Card House, something that is sort of smart that the GM puts in place, that the supervisors also put in place, is they want people to come and, to the best of the ability of everybody, truly have a good experience, right? So it's a lot easier to do that when you have that little bit of leeway sometimes. And it's really a tricky thing, but at Texas Card House has really good staff. You can be a little bit more relaxed on some of the rules at a place like that. It's hard to be relaxed on rules at a casino, because these players at the casino, they're also table games players, you know, they're also slot players. They're worth more than just the poker player too, I guess is part of what you would say. But yeah, it ends up being a more strict interpretation in casinos and a more loose interpretation in card rooms. Also in card rooms, you're able to sort of get more stuff done without surveillance approval, for example. Like in a poker room, surveillance is much more involved, because they have a surveillance department that is very trained and on point for high stakes types of events. My neighbor's knocking again. I'm gonna go in 1 second. But in casinos and in corporate environments, it's just everything matters is the simplest thing I want to say. And you know, people that are working their way up the chain, they're working their way up the chain, not just in poker, in those environments too. So you're also trying to get yourself into other departments. It's more serious is really what I'll say. Hit Girl says, thanks, love the stream, appreciate you very much. Lake Poker Consulting says, just checked it, great that you exactly offer what it was I was looking for, looks great. I'm supporting to open a poker club this month, and we will likely join it. Awesome. I am here. If you have any more questions, you can email me at, I'll put it here, Marc@Truepokerdealer.com. And yeah, I mean, I'll say it, train the whole room, right? Like, get everybody to get memberships, and everybody can learn how to deal poker. But yeah, that is what I offer, and you can use it to learn how to deal. So thank you very much, everybody, and appreciate you guys, appreciate the conversation, and I will see you guys next week.